Hello everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Today's video is about Evel Knievel. The Evel Knievel Museum is in Topeka, Kansas, within the historic Harley-Davidson dealership building. My wife and I traveled 90 miles or so a few months back from my home to check out this museum. It really brought back a lot of great memories for me. So if you're over the age of 50 years old, you no doubt have your own memories of Evel Knievel and what he did in the late 1960s through the 1970s as one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived. If you're younger though, I thought that by doing this video you could gain an appreciation of not only what this man accomplished, but also how he was part of a very interesting period in the United States from a historical and cultural perspective. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts about what you think about the life and times of Evel Knievel, and what about him was most interesting to you. I first want to thank the Evel Knievel Museum staff for allowing me to share photos and videos in this piece that I obtained during my tour of the museum. Note that this is not a sponsored video, but rather something I wanted to do mostly from a personal perspective. For this video, I'll tell you about the life and major motorcycle stunts of Evel Knievel and relate how he both reflected and helped create this rather unique time in American history. I will also share some of my observations that I had about some of the lessons that can be learned from what Evel Knievel did and said during his lifetime that inspired me both when I was a kid and which continue to inspire me today. Evel Knievel was well known around the US and abroad, and I'd say that his popularity was that of, say, the biggest rock star or sports star in that era that you could imagine combined. Especially if you were a kid like I was growing up during this period of his active career, you followed everything that he did. Hero isn't a word I like to throw around a lot, but as a kid, I really did view Evel Knievel as a heroic figure. As I got older, I realized that Evel had many flaws and personal demons that in a way made me admire him even more for what he was able to accomplish professionally. Possibly because of this, or despite these issues, he sought and attained an uncommon level of greatness in his professional life. Also, he was very much a product of his times, and I don't like it when people try to force modern sensibilities on what amounts to historical figures acting more or less within the norms of their own time. As Evel grew older, he was very candid about the mistakes that he had made in his life and what he had learned from them. I will show you a selection of some video clips from some of his interviews that he has given over the years to illustrate what I mean. Evel Knievel was a stage name taken by Robert Craig Knievel, who was born in Butte, Montana in October of 1938. He died in Florida in 2007 at the age of 69. He started his motorcycle stunt jumping career in 1965 and performed his last jump in October 1976. He attempted or completed over 75 ramp-to-ramp motorcycle jumps during this time. He actually successfully completed most of his jumps, but you usually hear about the ones where he crashed, and there were some spectacular crashes for sure. Here's a video showing the model of the Honda motorcycle that he used for his first jump in 1965 at his dealership in Butte, Montana. This video is what I took at the museum. Early in his career, he also jumped using Norton and Triumph T120 motorcycles, but started using Harley-Davidson motorcycles exclusively from the early 1970s. He used customized XR 750 motorcycles for his jumps starting in 1970. The bike weighed 295 pounds, but is considerably heavier than today's motocross bikes and certainly didn't have much suspension travel. He jumped using the same set of wood ramps throughout his entire career. Here's a view inside this fully restored touring truck that's inside the Evel Knievel Museum. Here's a video segment of him on his first televised motorcycle jump over 15 cars in March 1967 in Gardena, California on a Triumph T120. This is just before he started wearing his American flag colors on his bike, helmet, and leathers. Probably his most famous jump was the one he attempted in 1974 over the Snake River Canyon in Idaho on his steam-powered rocket cycle called the Sky Cycle X2. I'll cover highlights of several of these jumps in this video. There were several reasons for Evel's popularity in my opinion. First, he was doing or attempting to do very dangerous things that were not really done by others on such a large scale until he came along. Also, Evel had a larger-than-life personality and was very good at self-promotion. Interest in what he did was amplified by the fact that motorcycles and motorcycle culture was a very big part of the United States during the 1960s and 1970s. Another factor for me that generated so much interest in what he did is that when I was a kid, many of his stunts were broadcast on live television. This was a time when there just weren't that many packaged entertainment options. Growing up, television in my area consisted of a total of 3 VHF and 1 UHF TV stations, which went off the air each night. Just about every kid I knew either had a chopper or BMX style bicycle or wanted one. A lot of kids also rode their bicycles off ramps made of lumber and bricks scrounged from their garage in honor of or in inspiration by Evel Knievel. What is also interesting is that Evel Knievel had a wife and 4 young children throughout his stunt career. His sons, Robbie and Kelly, would join Evel to perform some pre-jump motorcycle stunts. Robbie would go on to have a long solo motorcycle stunt jumping career of his own. Evel got into motorcycle stunt riding, motorcycle jumping to be more exact, after starting out on the wrong side of the law, as they say. He quickly moved on to stints selling insurance and later motorcycles. He found that he was a great salesman, so it was only natural that he would be able to do a good job promoting himself once his motorcycle stunt career started full-time in 1966 after being inspired by Joey Chitwood's Auto Daredevils. Evel's most famous jump in his career was the disastrous crash while jumping the fountains in front of Caesars Palace Casino in Las Vegas. Ironically, Evel had hired director John Derrick to film the event, and it was footage captured by John's then-wife, Linda Evans, that showed the crash in super slow motion. Had this jump been successful, it would have been Evel's longest at 141 feet. You could see how the bike trapped Evel between the front and back tires after he fell from the bike because the handlebars snapped off when the bike hit the landing ramp. The slow motion video of this crash elevated Evel's status well beyond what he had achieved before. It is said that this is the most viewed sports-related video of all time. It was a credit to Evel's skill at promotion that caused him to pay for the filming of the jump out of his own pocket. He often said that this was the toughest jump of his career. The jump nearly killed him, and he spent the better part of the month in the hospital with a concussion and multiple broken bones. The Evel Knievel Museum has the leathers and helmet that Evel was wearing during the crash at Caesars here on display. Evel stated numerous times that this helmet definitely saved his life. When I was a kid, I remember Evel was always talking about doing what you promised to do. One of the things that really interests me is that he was very introspective and a thoughtful person and yet took action. Big and bold action at that. He took risks and managed them the best he could. His attitude can be summed up in the following statement that he made. All my jumping risks were calculated, but anything can happen. You have to commit yourself to the jump 60 yards away. There are jumps, before you even take off, you know you aren't going to make it. Sometimes you find out in the air, and then you've got to make a decision. If you've got any chance at all, you grit your teeth and hold on. If you don't, then you just relax and roll with it. I think that last part at the end can be called Satori, or sudden enlightenment. During his time performing, he broke 39 bones. Here's a display at the museum detailing all the performing-related injuries that he sustained during his career. There used to be a pervasive rumor back in the 1970s that he broke every bone in his body, which obviously wasn't true. By breaking 39 bones, many of them more than once, ended up causing him a lot of pain throughout the rest of his life. He embodied both establishment and anti-establishment ideals. He was in favor of mandatory helmet laws, which put him at odds with many riders. He wasn't big on politicians or some of the things that were going on in the government. He was a strong voice against the use of drugs, which is really noteworthy, particularly for someone in the 1960s and 70s. He also wasn't a fan of some of the club riders who he accused of engaging in drug dealing and other illegal activities. At his jump at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, there ended up being a complete brawl between the audience and several Hell's Angel members. Here's some footage of that scene. It looks like a professional wrestling match that broke out at a motorcycle show. His quote that sums up his thinking on this was, "The Hells Angels were never good for motorcycling. Just because they ride motorcycles does not make them men. I hate what they stand for, and I want everybody to know that they are not accepted by motorcycle people. They never had any respect for anybody, and they stand for everything that is wrong with society. They take everything away from those that stand in their way. We don't like them. That's just the way it is." One of the more interesting aspects of Evel Knievel was his lavish lifestyle. He owned multiple jet aircraft, large yachts, and many other big-ticket items. He often joked that he planned to spend as much or more than he made while he was alive, since the money would be no good to him after he was gone. I think his line was something to the effect that he made $33 million during his career but spent $35 million. As I mentioned, one of his biggest events was when he attempted to jump the Snake River Canyon on his steam-powered jet cycle in September 1974. There was a malfunction immediately after the launch of the jet cycle that caused the parachute to deploy before the vehicle left the launch ramp. This caused Evel to nearly land in the middle of the Snake River, where he would no doubt have drowned because he was also unable to release his harness. Fortunately, he landed on the riverbank and was rescued, only having suffered a broken nose.
It just brought me closer to my dream of far. To be a man and to to do my best. To stand alone is my only quest.
3, 2, 1. You released prematurely. She started to roll, and she's coming back this way now. And there's the top chute is out, the main chute is out. There she goes. She's into the rim of the canyon. Going to crash, obviously, into the river. It is okay, though. She's coming down about 17 feet per second. Slowly going down.
Just clear the rock. David, I can't see anything. The helix, nobody has gone into the water. As I say, there are 2 men rowing up to the site.
He said before his jump across the canyon, "I'd rather be busted into the wind like a meteorite than just become dust. God made us to live, not just exist. I'm ready." What a lot of people don't know is that Evel had 2 of the Sky Cycles built, and he launched the first one unmanned a month before his launch. The test launch was not successful, and the Sky Cycle crashed at the bottom of the canyon. He gave an interview to Jim Rome in 2002, which was 5 years before he died. He said something in that interview that was about still doing things as an older person that really resonated with me. At the time, Evel was just a few years older than I am right now.
I love life so much. I love to live it to the hilt, and I want to. And to me, to make this jump and to be successful at it, at my age, I'm going to be 64 next year, I want to prove to people, just because you're retired, the laws of society say they want to constitute your morals and tell you you're retired, you're done. You're not done. Get out of your bathrobe and your slippers and off your ass from in front of the television. Do something for yourself. Do you remember when you were a little boy, you walked out one day and you saw the sunlight, you saw the dew on the flowers, and there was a smell in the air, and you were young and full of piss and vinegar. You got to have that.
I'll get up.
After he retired from motorcycle performing, Evel was still taking risks, but this time it involved betting on his golf games. It was common for him to bet thousands of dollars while golfing with friends and competitors. He said the most money he ever won in one game was $100,000 from Bobby Riggs. Next, I want to show you the clip from his son, Kelly Knievel, talking about his favorite quote from his dad.
This is my favorite quote. You know the definition of an asshole? Somebody who won't do what you want them to do. They are an asshole.
As I mentioned previously, Evel was one of the best promoters and self-promoters in sports entertainment. He was one of the first people to make a significant amount of money from product licensing. Who remembers the Evel Knievel stunt cycle? It was probably one of the best-selling toys of all time. Here's some footage of some of the items displayed in the museum that he licensed to manufacturers. The coolest item, aside from the toy jump cycle, I think, is the pinball machine. He really had a lot of self-awareness and a good sense of humor. Here's a quote that illustrates this. Evel Knievel was a character I created. He was even hard for me to live with sometimes. He wouldn't do anything I told him, the dumb son of a bitch. There's a quote on the wall of the museum that is along a similar vein. It says, "I created Evel Knievel, and then he sort of got away from me." So I'd have to say that I really appreciate his outlook on life and for taking responsibility for your own actions. He has a quote on attitude. "A positive mental attitude has got me everything I ever had in life and through every obstacle life continues to challenge me with." And to go along with that, here's his quote that is along the wall at the museum as you enter. "A man may fall many times, but he is never a failure until he refuses to get up." He certainly paved the way for today's modern motorcycle performers, such as Travis Pastrana from Nitro Circus. So I'd say you should definitely check out the Evel Knievel Museum in Topeka, Kansas if you get the chance. In about 18 months or so, the entire museum will be moving to its new location in Las Vegas, Nevada. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and please let me know your thoughts on this video in general, and Evel Knievel in particular, by leaving a comment. Thanks for watching.